I love a good starter set, and I'm going to ask, is this starter set any good? Hello and welcome to the Battling Barrow, and in this we're going to have a product review looking at this, the Call of Cthulhu Starter set. If you watch the channel, you'll know I kind of like starter sets, role-playing game starter sets. I did a whole mini-series looking at the D&D starter sets throughout history recently, and so I thought I'd look at another starter set, in this case Call of Cthulhu. Normally the channel's fantasy-based, but I am a fantasy fan as well. I am a horror fan. I love horror films, and what I'm going to do is, before I get into the review of the product, I'm going to give you a bit of background about my sort of horror likes and me and H.P. Lovecraft. I'll sort of put a timestamp in, so you can have a look at the timestamps where you can skip all this waffle if you don't want to listen to it. If you do, let's enjoy the waffle. So yes, as well as being a massive fantasy fan, I am a big horror fan as well. The reason being is I just like the escapism. Fantasy gives me that sense of adventure. Horror gives me that sense of I enjoy being scared. It's like a roller coaster. You know, you go on a roller coaster because you enjoy the thrill and the scares it gives, knowing it's done in a safe manner, and that's what a horror film is. When I was young, I used to sneak up and watch TV in my room and catch the old 30s black and white Universal horror films, and from there I progressed to the sort of 50s, 60s colour Hammer horror films, and then when sort of mid-80s I began watching more adult mid-80s horror films. I should point out that I'm not sadistic or anything. I don't like, there was this whole torture porn phase in the beginning of the 2000s. I didn't like that. That was just watching people get butchered, not my kind of thing. I like fun horror films. What do I mean by that? It doesn't even have to be a horror comedy, but fun horror films are the ones where you can tell that everyone's having fun, the maker's having fun. Things like, so from the 80s, Fright Night. That's not really a comedy, but there is a sense of fun when you watch it. Vamp, another 80s vampire film, same sort of thing. Really scary at the time, not so much now, but fun with it. Another one was The Reanimator. And here we begin to get the connection to this intro. Yes, and in that film I enjoyed it, but I noticed a name of H.P. Lovecraft. The film itself terrified me because I'm slightly necrophobic, where I have a fear of dead things, particularly living dead things. When I grew up watching these films, I used to live opposite a massive cemetery as well, and so that used to terrify me and add to the scared fun. But yes, with this film Reanimator, there was a connection to H.P. Lovecraft, and because I enjoy being scared, zombie films were my go-to. They were also very gory, and I was into working out how they did the special effects and things. Again, watching fantasy films, I enjoyed special effects in those, enjoyed the special effects in horror films. But yes, I'd watch a lot of zombie films, which is quite difficult to do in the 80s in the UK, because a lot of them were banned or really difficult to get hold of. Because whilst you guys were all across the pond in America having this satanic panic with D&D, we were having the video nasty panic of films over here. So D&D, no one batted an eyelid with over here. Films, wow, you could be crucified for having the wrong film in your house, and people were arrested for it. It seems silly now, especially when you watch these really corny, cheesy films, but yes, that's how it was in the 80s. So, some of these difficult films to get hold of were by Italian directors. One of them was Lucio Fulci, who released a film over here called Zombie Flesh Eaters, which I believe in America is Zombie 2, I want to say, unofficial sequel to Dawn of the Dead. And he also released some other films, which has now become known as his Gates of Hell trilogy, and these are films I wanted to see as a kid. I managed to see them in the end in a very highly cut version we got, and the VHS covers for these, City of the Living Dead, you will notice on the UK cover that I'm hopefully remembering to show on screen now, it says H.P. Lovecraft's City of the Living Dead, and the other one was The Beyond, and again the video cover here, H.P. Lovecraft's The Beyond, and the other one was House by the Cemetery, which was, I think it said, inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft. So now I've got this connection to who H.P. Lovecraft is. Still at this time I don't know, pre-internet, so I couldn't look it up. But this name keeps cropping up, and being into zombie films, I'm like, is this guy a author of zombie horror before zombie horror was a thing. I gathered he was an older author. And I lived in a smallish town, bigger now, it's built up. I still live in the same sort of area. But you know, it's not like London or a big major city, so I had very limited access to books and a library. And I'd look out for H.P. Lovecraft in bookshops, and then one day I came across him. And so I eagerly bought these three volumes, and on the bus home, I can remember getting a bus home and flipping through them to see if I can find the films I've watched that inspired me to get into him. And straight away I saw Reanimator, Herbert West Reanimator, so I recognised that, so that was a good start. So I tried to look for City of the Living Dead, but I couldn't find that, obviously. But I did see something called The Dunwich Horror, which in City of the Living Dead, this town it's set in, the city it's set in, is that of Dunwich. So I thought, okay, great, they've just renamed it for the film. The Beyond I couldn't see, but there was a story called From Beyond, so I was in there. So the first thing I read was Reanimator. Pretty much recognised it as an adaptation that the film made. In fact, it seemed to be parts. The films 1 and 2 were based on just one story that was split out, The Bride of the Reanimator. The Dunwich Horror, on the other hand, was a bit different because that didn't seem to be anything like the film. What it did mention though was the Necronomicon, and then that got me thinking, oh, that's from Evil Dead. I just didn't realise that was H.P. Lovecraft. I just thought it was made up for the film Evil Dead. But I'm reading this Dunwich Horror story and suddenly I'm fascinated. Now I'm not thinking about that it's not a zombie film, I'm thinking about this, there's this cosmic horror, there's something bigger than us, and that sort of terrified me even more. The Beyond, or From Beyond, I read, and the same sort of thing. So then I just started reading other stories of H.P. Lovecraft and fell in love with him. There was one called Dagon that I read, and it seemed to have sort of sequels in Call of Cthulhu, who now we know what that is, and Shadows of Innsmouth seemed to be all sort of related to me when I read them. And then I would scour the library for more books, and in the library I came across a book called Dagon's Bell and Other Tales by Brian Lumley. And so I borrowed that and read that, and I was like, these are similar tales of H.P. Lovecraft but are not by H.P. Lovecraft. By then we're getting into the early 90s, mid-90s, I had access to the internet by then, and so I went down a rabbit hole and discovered the whole Cthulhu mythos. And that's my background of getting me into H.P. Lovecraft, who I love his stories, this whole cosmic horror and stuff. Not what I was expecting when I first started out. I thought it was going to be a zombie author, and we ended up with something totally different. But one thing is, I was into role-playing games, and I then sort of took note in the game shop, oh, there's this Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, but never bought it. The closest it come was when I did decided to give it a go in around the 3rd edition era of D&D. I knew I wouldn't have time to learn a whole new role-playing game, so I purchased this. This is the D20 rule set. Interesting, I used to have a mask on that as a kid. I used to glow in the dark. But yeah, this is D20 rule set by Monty Cook and John Tynes. It's a lovely book. Never played it. I'd already decided that perhaps D&D itself probably wasn't the rule set for it. Heroic fantasy where you're meant to kick butt, I guess. Put into something where you're not, I guess. It didn't seem right. Lovely book, lovely reference material of reading up about the creatures behind it and so forth. Lovely presentation, but never really used it. So, well, that brings us up onto this. Finally, this is the 7th edition. I thought I might as well give it a whirl. And of course, the moment I buy this, they announced there's a 40th edition version of this coming out, and that is the Poly Clickbait thumbnail. I said there's a problem with it. The problem is I've bought it and it's been updated already. So the first thing we're going to do is have an unboxing and talk about it. So I don't know if this is coming across from camera, but the first thing you may notice about it is it's slightly longer than most boxes. Most boxes would probably be end here, so a D&D starter box set would be here, which we'll get to in a minute. It has a lovely presentation. I love this artwork. We'll get to that in a minute. Just tells you what's in the box. Side is just that all the way around. Inside, and you're going to see it instantly when I take the box off. There's nothing on the inside lid. Sometimes they put a map there or what have you. You can see instantly the reason why, because of the dice are up there. Or you could, if that camera would focus. There we go. The dice. What dice do we get? If you're into any sort of D&D, this isn't. I've been painting models, by the way. That's not mould or anything. A D20, 2 percentile dice, tens of dice, a D8, D4, D6, and a individual units dice. You get 2 of these because you're going to get a bonus and a penalty dice. So you can roll both of these together, with the blue being the bonus or penalty. That's handy. You may need another one of these if you want different colours, so you can use this as the bonus, the other one as the penalty, what have you, but it's nice they've got in here. Instant complaint though, we'll get to here on this thing, what is in the box. No, it's a big deal, but if you look here, they are instantly the Q Workshop style dice, which we don't get, but if you get into the game and you really like dice, you know you can get a set of Call of Cthulhu themed dice for your collection. So we have this, what's in the box sheet, that just goes through what we're expecting to see. We have a advertisement, all pretty standard. Little read me first here. We have book 1. Now, you'd think you'd start with the rules, but no, we're going to start with book 1, Against the Flames. We're going straight in to an adventure. This is Alone Against the Flames. And if you look here, you can see numbers. If you've played anything like Fighting, Fantasy, or Choose Your Own Adventure, this is what this is, and I absolutely love this. It gives you a bit of background about the standard, what a role-playing game is, objectives, winners and losers, yada yada, dice, preps. If you've never played before, an example of never played any role-playing game, or even really heard of them, and this is your first experience, it's going to be good for you. But if you have played one before, probably don't need this. Lovely artwork. This is a great solo adventure. I really got into this. I'd probably play this again a few more times, see if I can do it a different path. I mean, so we know, spoiler ahead, this is my character sheet for it. I did have to do, I sort of had to go through it a few times because I did die quite a lot towards the end. But yeah, it's a lovely choose your own adventure book. Got a lovely vibe from the story, and what this will do is, as you go through, you will learn the rules, and they're applied. I think I'd love to see more games of this, because you're learning the rules sort of as you're reading a story, and it will tell you, write this on your sheet, this is where your sheet is, but it gives you a practical example, because sometimes you can read the rules but you kind of not seeing how it all fits together, whereas this allows you to do that, and I love that. I actually found that was fantastic. Make a ride roll. You may have a bonus die. Roll the 10th percentile die twice and take the lower amount. That's brilliant. That means what that's referring to is you're going to roll these both dice here. Whichever one's the lower is your result, because you're trying to get under a percentile in the rules. So rolling low is actually quite good in this case. So yeah, I won't go into the story too much, apart from you're on a bus journey and end up in a small town that has instant creepy vibes. That's all I'm going to say. The Call of Cthulhu stuff is also set in the 1920s as its sort of core setting, so that's all good, well and good. So you know, it has that 20s vibe going on. It's quite a difficult story, I would say, and I said I want to play through it again multiple times. I mean, gruesome, just to see, but that is great. Solo adventures to get you used to rules, brilliant. As we know, one of my favourite rule sets is Beck Me, and the Red Box D&D had a solo gaming which we loved growing up playing. So this is to me a continuation of that sort of aspect of it, and I love it. So more starter sets have solo adventures in. Brilliant. Introductory rules is thinner than the solo adventure. These are staple bound thin glossy paper, good quality. So yeah, we have a what is Call of Cthulhu, player rules, bit of background on the mythos, some wonderful art. This also has how to create an investigator in a very basic manner. The rulebook, it tells you here as well, and it says the introductory rules does it, but this does it as well. You don't roll dice for this. This is a very basic character creation. You already have characteristics here that are sort of determined, and you just decide where to put those. For the full rules, you would need the hardback full rule book, but just having character creation in it, most of them give you pre-gens. This does too, but most just give you pre-gens and don't cover character creation at all, even in this very cut down basic manner. But this is again great. It's like giving you just the steps on how to create a character, so, with sample investigator options. So if you did want to have a go, you could. And I love that. Some basic skill descriptions here. Bit of backstory there, which is actually somewhat more important than D&D. Then just some simple rules explanations on how to roll dice, make checks, do opposed rolls, loss of sanity. In Lovecraft's work, sanity is a big issue where when the protagonist realises the truth of the situation, it is often enough to drive them mad. So we have a sanity system. This is probably a system where if you're used to D&D where your characters start weak and get strong, this is almost the opposite. You'll start strong and normal and get weaker and weaker. Nothing wrong with that. Combat, close combat, firearms, fighting maneuvers, basic but applicable. You can actually play some games with these rules. Hit points, hit points, wounds and healing. The interesting thing about this Call of Cthulhu is on a character sheet, pull this one up again, you have 3 numbers for it. So you see my strength there, 40, 20 and 8. What this is you pre-do it, so you don't have to do it on the fly, but it's worked out as full, half and fifth. So if I need to make a normal strength roll, I'd make it under 40. If I needed to make a hard strength roll, I'd have to roll under 20. If I wanted to make an extreme strength roll, I'd have to roll under 8. So that's what that is. But they're even good with this. If you're not very good at maths, they've provided a table so you can just look it up. Oh, my strength's 40, so my half is 20 and my fifths are 8. Very, very useful. Next up, we have the adventures. Paper Chase and other adventures. I think it may be the same for this one as well, but I believe these are all somewhat classic Call of Cthulhu adventures brought up to scratch for the 7th edition of the game. What I like about what Chaosium do in their credits is they have the written by credits and they have clear credits. So in this case, this is written by the sort of makers and the original people, if that makes sense. So what we have here is, credits for this version and then clear credits of where it comes from. So Paper Chase was originally written by John Sullivan and revised by Mike Mason. I love that, giving clear credit. And I believe this is it in all the books here? No, I didn't think I saw it there. I think it's clear credit here. Mainly because this is a revised edition, which is originally written by Sandy Peterson, which has now been later revised by Ling Willis and others, and now revised by Mike Mason. So having something like that, clear credits, is amazing, especially when companies such as Games Workshop are trying to do away with credits full stop. So someone who's into the history of such things, that is great. So we have the first adventure here. We have some predefined characters, which we'll get some proper sheets later on. But Paper Chase, yes, this is a very, very simple by simple, I don't mean that negative. I mean that's fantastic. This is a simple adventure, so even just by almost playing this, you probably don't even need to read the introductory rules to be able to run this, but obviously read the introductory rules, that's probably more recommended. This is designed for just 2 players, so one actual playing character and one the keeper. If you're used to hearing things like Dungeon Master and Games Master, the term keeper is used for that, and the term investigators is used for the playing characters. So this is great. You can play it with more players, so it can be for 1 to 2, but ideally just 1 or 2. If I ever run this, I'd probably run it with my current group, which is just 2 players. So for me, who doesn't have a massive gaming group, already we're off to a good start. I know I can just run this with my current group. I don't have to worry about trying to find other people and what have you. It would need some extra work. When I was reading through it, I could see where the extra work would be needed. It's not much to include an extra player. Fantastic. As I said, very simple adventure. Oh, spoilers, if you want to play this, skip this part to the conclusion. Because obviously I might give something away. I probably won't. I'm going to contribute very high level, but even flipping through here of the map, you may want to see stuff like that. So yeah, there it is. There could be some potential combat in this. There's some potential sanity rolls, obviously investigation in this. It gives you the idea on how not to run things linear. It is fantastic. Edge of Darkness. Again, this is it ups the player count to 2 to 5, but again, something that could be wrong just with 2 players or 3 players, including the keeper. Fantastic. This is a bit more complex of an adventure, but still not that bad, really. It takes things to the next level, sure, but in a very gradual process, so you're not going to feel overwhelmed if you're running this. Again, I got a very good from all these adventures so far. I get a very good, like after I read through these, it was like I read through a H.P. Lovecraft short story in my mind. So I felt so it was very good. Really enjoyed this one. There could be some fun encounters with this one here. Again, trying to not give too much away. So I say that I really enjoyed that one. The next one, I probably didn't enjoy it as much, mainly because it just wasn't Lovecraftian enough for me. Lovely artwork. Good setting though. Jack being the 20s, it takes full advantage of the jazz era, prohibition era of America. Yes, and this bit here, because it's to do with the 1920s and people of colour, particularly jazz things. Yeah, I do not a video to go into this too much, but there were certain places where there was segregation, shall we say, and there were people only allowed in as performers or workers. If you're a younger person, this may seem like a shock because we live in a quite progressive world. So this tries to handle that, and I was a bit shocked by this because I felt it was needed, but I thought it was very poorly written. And looking at the clear credits, I can see why. It's like it seemed to be different in writing skills, and you can sort of tells you here that it is in fact written by a different author. I think most of it was good. There's this section here that should have been done away with in a sense because there's no evidence for what it's portraying. It's just my opinion. I don't like racism anyway. I think we all must, sensible people probably agree, racism is not good. Something that needs to be combated, but it's making, I don't know, there's just this sentence set badly with me, that block there. The rest of it is okay if poorly written. But yeah, this is probably something that probably needed to be known because perhaps not a lot of people think about that. Love this, talking about Harlem in the 20s. That was great. A bit about the elder being that's in question we're going to be fighting here. It has undead in it, so you'd think I'd like it, but it's just something about it. It didn't have a Lovecraftian enough feel for me. It's felt more generic horror. Is that a tentacle? That's a fuzzy tentacle. Very difficult to do. The map of Harlem in 1925, awesome. The handouts here, which we'll cover in a minute, awesome. I'll probably read through it again just to make sure I've not missed anything. I just didn't particularly like it for that kind of aspect. There was a lot to begin with for me. Okay, there was a lot of, like, I know I said the others when I read through it, it's like I was reading a HP Lovecraft story, but in those I could see player choices. With this, it's just a lot of stuff happens, and occasionally you might ask the players to roll a dice. A lot of happens till almost here, and even then it's still a lot happens. So this is all stuff that you're gonna have to read out and do, and even then you're at this club and then you're just there and guest arrives. You have to look. It's not really until investigations that night that you begin to let the players free, and perhaps that's just me being new to the game and not seeing the opportunity as a keeper to do stuff, but it just seemed an awful lot of read this out to the players, read this out to the players, this then happens, read this out to the players. I didn't like it for that reason. As I said, I may return to it at a later date and revise it. I love the presentation of it and everything. I love the fact there's jazz musicians in it and everything is pretty good. But apart from that, so one, not very good adventure in my opinion, and two, free if you include this, great ones. So that's off to a good start. The predefined characters now in these lovely colourful sheets. We have Jessie Williams. She is a history student, so that's her. That's pretty cool. We have Key Cocaine, a science student. Double-sided, but you have the backstory there. We have Louis Russo. Or was it Lois, I guess? Lois Russo, engineering student. We have not Indiana Jones, Nevada Jones, who is a archaeology professor. And we have Wentworth Avebury, who is a languages professor. We have pre-gens. We have my cat running in. He wants food. He's been out all day. Hold on, cat. Hold on, Bubs. I'll feed you in a minute. Some blank sheets if you need them. You're always going to need blank sheets for characters. And awesomely, the handouts. So I love giving my players handouts in my games. Single-sided as well. So we don't have to worry about giving too many handouts out. As in, I give you handout 1, but handout 2's on the back, so I don't want to give out handout 2 to someone else. Can you know, that kind of awkwardness. So they're all single-sided. That is great. So we have all the handouts. So we go through them. So these are all diary pages. Always good to have these authenticness of them. I still might get the PDF of this. I've only got the hardback. I might buy the PDF of it so I can get access to the handouts, so I can cut them up and give them, like, rather than give full sheets. But I don't know. Here is what I'm sort of mainly talking about. So you have 2 handouts on 1 sheet. So this is a downside to me. So if I want to give out handout 3, don't want to give out handout 4, so I'd have to cut this. So I'm thinking about just getting some PDFs, buying a PDF and printing them out myself. The handouts, of course, are this lovely full glossy paper. Here are some photos. Look who that is. A map. I'd probably again print that out myself, and maybe just, I don't want to give them the full map to begin with. I want to say, here's your house. Are you going exploring? And if they go to this path, give them this bit. Considerable and so forth. Or I might even just lay that out using dungeon tiles. Same with this. But if you need to, you've got maps here. The club from the third one. And a lovely map of Harlem. So, is this any good? And the answer is yes. This is a fantastic starter set. For what you get inside, for the price you pay, brilliant. I don't know what the 14th edition is, if it's just going to be an art update or if it's going to be different, but this is amazing. I liked it so much that I went out and I got the 7th edition Keeper rulebook. I'm now ploughing through reading. I want to know more about the game. So yes, if your objective of a starter set is to get you into the game, this one has certainly worked. So I may do a little video on this at some point in the future. I love the artwork on this looming monster coming out of the dark, brilliant. But yes, so if you are into want a role-playing game with a bit of difference, you're bored of the fantasy, just want to change, or you like HP Lovecraft or Lovecraftian vibes and you haven't tried it yet, or want to try a horror role-playing game, you can't go wrong with this starter set. So that's it for this review, guys. Highly recommended. I don't give scores. I don't really see the point in scores. Just whether it's good or not, or average, I guess. Good. Yay. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me waffle on. Till the next video, stay safe and take care.